We're talking WSU football with Alex Brink. The Cougs are off their bye week, getting ready to stick around Pullman, where they will host Louisiana Tech on Saturday. Alex, we talk about this team coming off of a tough performance at Oregon State, but the bye week sounded like it went well, according to head coach Jimmy Rogers, including maybe getting away for a little bit, not going through the grind of a football season. What do you think about that? With the guys maybe getting a little bit of time to reflect, not only for healing up purposes, but maybe just to try and zoom out on a season.
Well, it's been I think in general, a particularly long season to date, right, for the Cougs because you've had, long trips, whether back east to Virginia, down to Ole Miss. Obviously, there's been a ton of injuries, a lot of change in the offseason with a whole new staff. And so, I think the idea of having two bye weeks is beneficial. Having a bye week late in the year probably came at a really good time. They could kind of catch their breath a little bit. It's not ideal to go into a bye week off of a bad performance like the Oregon State game, but certainly got healthy. It sounds like get some guys back potentially, heading into a big 3-game stretch.
Talking about the injuries, head coach Jimmy Rogers saying he's never experienced something like this throughout all his years of coaching. It'd be hard pressed to find a coach who has, especially the injuries on the offensive line. When you have, the five guys up front that are opening holes for your run game and protecting your quarterback just decimated by injury, just do you think that's maybe one of the biggest reasons that the offense has struggled of late, especially in that Oregon State game?
Well, there's no doubt. It's nearly impossible to find a level of consistent success offensively when you have, 4 out of 5 guys either out of position or playing for the first time, right, on the offensive line. So I think the expectations need to be a little bit muted around what can be done. Certainly you look at the second half, of that Oregon State game. I think that was a huge piece of it. You had a true freshman playing right guard. You had a brand new center. Obviously, right tackle has been an issue. So if some of those guys were able to get back, which it sounds like they might, particularly Brock Dew, TBD on Christian Hilborn, but just in general, getting at least Dew back will really help, I think, offensively.
Absolutely. So the Cougs have 3 games remaining. They're currently sitting at 4-5. Bowl eligibility still out there. 3-game win streak, and you finish the year 7-5. Maybe that doesn't look so bad, when you look back on it in the offseason. But we're taking it one game at a time. You got Louisiana Tech coming to town. Just how important is it to come out of the bye week, maybe get a little bit healthier, and get this win, get back on track? Because again, you get this win, and you just have the one more win out there to get bowl eligibility.
Yeah, this one's really important. Obviously, you don't want to probably have the pressure down the stretch of trying to win two out of two to get to six wins. This is, in my opinion, probably your best opportunity in that you get a team in Louisiana Tech that has had their struggles in their own right. You're playing them at home. It's a late kick for them, right? Coming to the West Coast. Their quarterback was announced out with an ACL injury, so there's a lot going right for Washington State right now in this matchup, and they need to take advantage. It reminds me a little bit of the Toledo game where you have a chance to get an opponent that's coming across the country and a chance to get after them early. And maybe, if you do that, it can be hard for road teams to recover when they get down early.
Talking about how everything kind of relies on the health of the offensive line, and you can only be expected to do so much when you're down multiple starters. But I think it was maybe a bit of a head scratching performance from Zevi Eckhaus at Oregon State. Assuming that maybe the offensive line is even a little bit healthier than they were in Corvallis, what do you expect to see out of him? Because it seemed like a really uncharacteristic performance from him against the Beavs.
I think in general, Zevi Eckhaus is going to watch that film and probably go back and look at some of the other films, right, where he was maybe just a little bit too loose with the football. His decision making wasn't as clean as we'd seen it at times, and that can be a product of maybe trying to do too much or feeling like you have to carry the load. Particularly with an offensive line that's banged up. But Zevi Eckhaus is a smart kid. He's a good football player. He's going to play within himself. If he can do that, I think he'll find plenty of success against Louisiana Tech. And I think it'll help, again, with the running game being better and the ability to get the ball to the receivers on the outside, he doesn't have to do it all. And I think if he can stay in that mindset, then they're going to have a ton of success on Saturday.
Defensively, the big headline this week is that Louisiana Tech is coming without their starting quarterback. This is a Cougar defense that has already been performing well throughout this entire season. Just when you're going up against a backup quarterback, is there almost kind of the enticement to want to do even more, perform even better? And how did the Cougs, not beat themselves on defense by trying to do too much?
Yeah, they just, I mean, you can't take your foot off the gas. I mean, you definitely got to be aggressive still, but you don't need to change anything, right? This defense has shown that they can be really aggressive while also being disciplined at the same time. It feels like they really play together and rally to the football in a way that doesn't get them out of position, which is the biggest thing, right? Is if you play, kind of 11 hats of the football and be gap sound for the most part, you're going to be okay against a team like Louisiana Tech with a backup quarterback. That being said, there's been Jimmy Rogers has talked all year about tackling and making sure that they're getting guys to the ground. I think it's gotten better, but that's still got to be a focus heading into this last part of the season.
Finally, for you, just as we continue to talk about this final three-game stretch, two of them at home, one of them against Oregon State, who you've already seen. It is not out of the realm of possibility to go win two of these games, maybe even three of these games. Obviously, James Madison is so great, and we'll talk about them next week. But how important is that, specifically from a recruiting angle? Finishing the season on an upswing, finishing the season by going to get a bowl appearance. How much can that help kind of set the Jimmy Rogers regime and this program up for success in the future going forward?
Yeah, there's a lot to that. It's all the things you mentioned, right? It's the finishing on a positive note, right? Winning two out of three, getting in a bowl game, for I think the ninth time in 10 years or eighth time in 9 years, right? I mean, it's been that consistent. And, for Jimmy Rogers specifically, there was a lot going into the season where, he had every excuse to, not make, to be a 4 or 5 win team, and he's at a point where he can get to that 6 or 7 wins. I think that's a huge feather in this coaching staff and the athlete's cap. And the other big part that I think probably needs to be talked about is that, with the changes to the transfer portal, where there's only going to be one transfer portal window instead of two, that happens right after January 1st, the longer you're playing into December, the more relevant you are, right? Not only for athletes that are out in the portal, will be in the portal, but you're more relevant for the athletes on your roster, right? They're practicing and playing, and you get to engage with them every day. And so I think that helps with roster retention and will help in recruiting, as you get into the first part of the year.
Absolutely. Well, the Cougs will kick it off against Louisiana Tech at Gesa Field in Pullman at 7 o'clock on Saturday. And if you want to hear more from Alex Brink, you can catch up with him and Michael Bumpus on Talking Cougs. We'll have a link to that here in the article. Alex, good to be back home for you this week. I'm sure back on the Palouse, and hope the Cougs have a performance that makes it a fun Saturday night.
Yeah, looking forward to it. Thanks, go Cougs.